Hey guys, it's Hannah and welcome back to the Dyslexic Reader. Today we are going to be doing the 2/3 part of my July wrap up. I already have my mid-month wrap up a couple of weeks ago, and I also a couple of days ago put up my Booktubeathon wrap up. So that's up, and this is my final installment. The first book I read in the second half of the month that wasn't Booktubeathon was Divergent by Veronica Roth. I listened to the audiobook of this and I give it a 3-star. I thought it was a really good concept, but I really disliked the main character whose name I can't even remember. I'm not sure if that's a good or a bad thing, but I absolutely hated the main character, although I did think that the story was good. I didn't like the romance elements, and I'm not sure about Veronica Roth's writing style, and I'm not even 100% sure if I'm going to continue on with the series, but the library has them on audiobook, so there's a chance that I might. I thought it was a really good concept, and I thought it could have been done better, so I gave it a 3 stars. Then I read Cracked, Why Psychiatry is Doing More Harm Than Good by James Davies. This was my non-fiction for the month. I try to read at least one non-fiction a month. This book was about people being diagnosed with mental health issues and being prescribed medication mostly. There was a lot of other things in it as well, but mostly the idea that we still don't know, like 97% of mental illnesses, there is no scientific evidence to prove that there is a physical problem in the brain that's causing them. Yet, like 99% of people who are diagnosed with a mental illness are given some sort of medicine, pills to take or whatever, and there's actually very little proof to say that these things work and that the pharmacy companies are pushing them in a certain way. And obviously pills for certain people do work, but it looks at the side effects and weighing that up, and how sort of psychiatry now doesn't want to help people, it just wants to stick on labels so that it can give them a certain type of drug because they're all getting paid by the drugs companies. And obviously it was quite one-sided. I felt like at the end it did become a little more well-rounded and a little less biased, so obviously it was. This guy has written it from his point of view, and you never can really get anything that is completely unbiased and completely in the middle, so this was obviously his side. But there was a lot of interesting interviews in this. I thought it was interesting the way that the book was written and composed, and I think that the language, I have no idea in psychiatry or mental health like studies, and I thought the language was very accessible. So if you're sort of interested in that, I definitely find this an interesting read, and there's some things I took away for it that I'll be looking out for sort of in the future, how it all impacts and works out. My little book that I keep all my reviews in has shut, so I need to find my place so I don't miss anything. The next book that I read was Box of Shocks by Chris McMahon. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. This book was incredible. I'm in the middle of composing a review purely for this book, so that'll be up on my channel hopefully in the next week or so. It deserves its own review. I'm going to tell you it was 5 stars. It was so good. It was so important, the messages that were conveyed, and it was absolutely beautiful. And as a teacher, it's something that I'm going to read to my students in the future for sure. It's about this young boy who, his parents are helicopter parents. They're always watching him, they're always hovering over him, double checking his homework. When he's playing, they're always watching him and telling him to stop climbing stuff. They're afraid he's going to get hurt, and he says they're just bugging him all the time. So he creates this box of shocks where over the course of a year or 2 years, he does some things that his parents wouldn't approve of. And every time he does that, he keeps a little memento and puts it in his box of shocks. But another little boy comes into the story who moves across the street, and he thinks he has the most perfect life. He gets to eat unhealthy food for lunchtime. His parents hardly ever seem to be home. He never has his homework done, and he doesn't have to come straight home from school. He seems to be out all hours, and he thinks this is great. But eventually it comes out that he eats junk food because crackers is literally the only food in his house. His parents are never home because they're working, and when they are home they're shouting at him. He doesn't get his homework done because he doesn't have the resources at home to do his homework. He's out to all hours because he's actually, as a young child, made to work at a recycling bank to make money. And our main character sort of just learns the importance of, like, he thought his parents were the worst. And actually how very wrong he was, and it's an absolutely beautiful story. It is so good. Then I read The Raven by Lou Reed. Now this was super weird. I didn't really like it. I gave it a 2-star, but I'm glad I picked it up. The art in it was really cool. This was a play sort of performance that was created around the works of Edgar Allan Poe, The Raven, and it was done like a script of the play was done out, and then it was illustrated. This is not a kid's book. Don't be giving it to children. Some of the images, I'm hoping I'm not flicking to the end, any of them are graphic and of body parts and such, but it's a very interesting art style. The artist is Lorenzo Mattinoli. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Apparently a well-known Italian artist, and I did enjoy the art, but the story was weird. I think it was a very dramatical performance, like it was very acted out, and I think because this was a script with pure dialogue and no stage direction, it made it hard to understand what was going on. So 2 stars for the book, but like a 4-star for the artwork. I really enjoyed that. Then we got into the whole Booktubeathon thing. I've got my wrap up separate to that written out, but there was a couple of things I've got done in the last day or so that weren't in the, my cat's licking a hug, not in the Booktubeathon, but I got them finished by the end of the month. My first one was Living with the Black Dog by Matthew and Ainsley Johnstone. This is a book, it's like I've done in a picture book format. So very little, like 1 sentence per page and just a picture. It is about, well, sort of living with depression, but it's more about someone who's caring for or living with someone with depression, and it is split up into several categories. So things you may have noticed for picking out when the person has depression. Do you notice that they have depression? What not to say or do, and then there what is to say and do, and it's really for someone who's living with depression. I currently am not living with or caring for anyone in depression, but obviously in my workplace, especially working with young children and things, it is something that you have to keep an eye out for, and for when things maybe aren't great at home and that could be affecting the kids in school. Even though this is geared to caring for an adult with depression rather than a child, I still think it overlaps. It was really well done. I felt like it was really relatable and understandable, and it was clear, and it wasn't sort of derogatory. And sometimes when you simplify these things down, you can make it almost derogatory, like you're simplifying it way too much. And I think you could even give this, but there's no reason why you couldn't give this book to a child or read it to a child. Like, it is 1 sentence per page and a picture. The language is very simple, and there's nothing in there that a child couldn't, that would be out of place to tell a child. The black dog would be an old English saying for depression, especially during the war. It sort of popped up in the war era, so you would say, oh, got the black dog today. It just meant you were feeling a bit down. It was a bit more sort of a lighter way to talk about depression. And sort of then in all the pictures, the black dog is making them do things. So there's a black dog, it's whispering in someone's ear, making them say things that they normally wouldn't say. or this person isn't getting off the chair, but the black dog is across his legs, stopping him from getting up. And I think it was just really good, really helpful, and I would totally recommend this to anyone living with depression, living with someone with depression or otherwise. For kids, teens, adults, elderly people, I just thought it was great. 5 stars, so good. And then the last book that I managed to finish was What Milo Saw by Virginia McGregor. Now, I want to do a full review of this as well because I'm still a bit confused. This book, if you watched my Booktubeathon wrap-up, this book is too long. That's my theme. This book is about 400 pages. It could have been like 280, and the story would have still been as good and still made sense. I thought it covered a lot of stuff. It covered divorce, abuse, refugees from Syria, and elderly people and family issues and disability and ageism. It covered a whole lot of issues, and I think most of them were dealt with very well. But this book was long, so it was boring in parts of it. And also, there was parts of it that were unrealistic, which really took away the flow from the storyline. And the protagonist in this is 9 years old, but I would not say it was a kid's book. I would say it was maybe young adult, or adult, but definitely not a kid's book, which was weird because it's written, the protagonist is a 9-year-old, and it is written in, like, you would think by looking at the inside, because the text is like quite big in space, that it's a kid's book, but the content that's in this is not kid friendly. I found it in the try something new in my library section and thought I would pick it up. Our main character has a degenerative eye condition, which means he's slowly losing his sight, and his great granny that he's incredibly close with and lives with him is put into a home, and that's where the story revolves around. There's too many characters. This point of view is taken from every character is a different point of view, and I think there's like 5, and I think that could have been down to 1 or 2. 3 at a push, but 5 it was a bit too flippy floppy for me. And yeah, as I said, some things were unrealistic. There was a nursing home with like 6 people in it. Like, there's no way you could open a nursing home and run it with only 6 people. You would like never get the money. It's not financially viable. The little boy is 9 and was sitting like exams as a teacher. Like, they don't happen to well into secondary school like that for me. Like, really, like, it pulled me out of the fantasy. There was just some really unrealistic things in the book, and there were little details, but it just showed the author maybe didn't do 100% of the research, and it sort of pulled me out of the fantasy. This is her first novel. I thought it was solid. I thought it was good. I'm still thinking about what I'm going to give it. I'm going to go with 3.5 stars for now. It could drop to a 3. It could jump up to a 4 depending on how, because I only finished it last night. Depending on how it sort of pulls up between now and my review. But I'm hoping to get a full review and talk about sort of how it coped with some of those issues that it coped with really well a little bit more. So keep an eye out for a video about that as well. And that is my third part of my July wrap up. I had a really good reading month. This month, off the top of my head, I think I read like 17 books, which is incredible. I'm really, really pleased with that. So I hope August is just as good. I hope you all have a good reading month and will have a good reading month in August. I hope you're all happy. I hope you're all healthy, and I shall see you in my next video. Goodbye.